Good evening, everyone. Some of you kind of know, what we were going to be talking about tonight, which is the elephant in the community, and that is why our kids are dying every day from substance abuse, and we're turning our heads and we're not talking about what's going on. So because we're not talking about it, they're not getting help.
It's difficult to sit there and watch a child sit there and tell you that he's had issues with drug abuse, alcohol abuse, sexual abuse, all these abuses, and nobody to help him.
We don't talk about recovery. We're very hush-hush about recovery because we're very hush-hush about the addiction process. We don't want our kids to know that, yeah, we used to do dope. Yeah, we did that at one time. But what we're missing is being able to tell them, look at us now. A lot of times we are trying to confront these kids and we ain't got our own stuff in order. We still trying to get back what was done to us or what we was lost when we was kids. We still try. We want to whoop everybody because we got whooped. Whooping don't work. The prison is full of people that got whooped. What we need to change is we need to change this cookie cutter response in dealing with our kids.
So young people are my favorite people on this planet. I think actually they're some of the most hated people. They're kind of high maintenance, they're a little annoying, they're rough around the edges, and you either really love them or you hate them. Thank God there are a lot of people in Houston who love them.
Okay, now this time everybody grab a hand for real this one.
Every now and then a city will have this experience. It almost sort of feels like an epidemic or like a tidal wave comes over a city that can get the city's attention. And unfortunately, that normally looks like a lot of young people dying. And all of a sudden, the community kind of wakes up. Instead of ignoring the problem, we really start looking at it. And it's painful to see. I think in Houston, part of how we were able to create this beautiful continuum of care is because we just got really, really tired of watching kids die.
I got him 3 months sober today.
Pierre got 7 months on Wednesday.
Jacob got 50 days out of treatment today.
Kayla has 60 days today.
Kristen got 6 months yesterday. On Sunday, I'll have 29 months sober.
Ben had 3 months on the 14th.
I got 6 months on Wednesday.
Owen had 10 days today.
Vance got 1 year on Wednesday and he's graduating Teen and Family today.
One way recovery high schools are unique from traditional schools is that every single person in that school is in recovery. They're in a community of kids that aren't going to judge them. So a lot of our students don't feel a shame or a stigma attached to the choices that they've made. They feel at home.
Hey, whose last day of kindergarten? When did you wake up just now? Yes. Oh, I like your morning hair. Okay, I'm gonna write something. Tell me if you can understand. L V. Yeah. V. What's L-O-V-E? Love. Eyes closed. No peeking. But hello, I just said no peeking. What? One bite before school. This is an important day, man. We're celebrating.
The fact that he's so excited about it makes, all of the sadness that I might have about, him growing and not being this little baby anymore. Just watching him be so excited makes all the difference.
What are you going to do on your last day of kindergarten?
You got hands up. Oh,
really excited, but it's just one more affirmation that he's not a little boy anymore, that he's growing up, and that's difficult. Okay, so be safe, have a great day, do your best. You go be a light in this world.
That's the picture.
I love you.
This is what I'm grateful.
It's just insane. I feel like he was just born. Time flies so fast. There's a little part of me that just wants to keep him a baby forever since he's our only kid. I'm really looking forward to him being a teenager. I think teenagers are very misunderstood people. But that's an age that I get. I get teenagers. So I've lived in Houston my entire life, born and raised here. Around 4 years old, a lot of stuff happened in my family. I started developing anxiety issues at a really young age. And so by the time I was in 1st and 2nd grade, I was having panic attacks. And as I grew up, anything that I could do to sort of numb out or turn it down, dial it down a little bit, I liked. My path to being abstinent from alcohol started with my mental health condition getting totally out of control. And it wasn't until I stopped drinking that I started feeling settled. The last time I had a panic attack, I was at a bachelorette party and we had taken a limo to a restaurant. And then I proceeded to just totally get tanked on Everclear margaritas. And I ended up in the bathroom, bawling my eyes out, feeling like I was gonna die. And my husband came and picked me up. And I remember him calling my dad and saying, I don't know what to do. She's freaking out. And I had been pacing up and down the corridor of our apartment complex in the middle of the night for hours. That's when I decided to go into counseling. There's a picture in my office, and I have it framed, and I keep it really close to my desk to remind myself, like, do you remember that night? Because that was the last night that I drank. That picture is a beautiful representation of really what life was like, because on the outside, it looked okay, but on the inside, it was the biggest shitstorm. It's always a good lesson to me when students come to be interviewed at Archway. It's like, it doesn't matter how perfect your makeup is and how put together your parents look, because nothing on the outside really matters. I mean, it's all about what's happening on the inside of you. Okay, so actually there's a couple of people I want to introduce you to. First of all, this is Laura. Everybody wave to Laura. Laura is actually one of the bigwigs that is going to be opening the Recovery High School, University High School in Austin, Texas this fall. You know, be an open book for her, because everything that she's learning today is going to help shape what that school is going to look like in Austin. Okay? People ask me what I do for a living. What I want to tell them is I just party with teenagers all day long. That doesn't sound really professional. So like the true version of what I do is I run a school that provides kids with love and nurturing and a place where they can be relaxed so that they can get the best education possible. So this is our 10th year. We started in the basement of this building with one staff person and 6 kids. Part of what I'm going to be helping Laura to address is how to create a community where it's a recovery-centered community and where there's positive peer pressure happening. Because if we're not on top of how the community is and we don't have strong leadership from students, then we end up creating a community that's actually going against what our mission is trying to accomplish. So every student has to have a willingness, both with recovery and with their academics. They can't be a rock star in their recovery program and not care about school. Part of the reason we started Recovery High Schools in Houston is because we were frustrated. We were having families show up emotionally, spiritually, pretty bankrupt. They'd been putting their kids in treatment center after treatment center, and these kids would come home, and in the first 90 days, they were using again. Many kids do not get sober on the academic calendar, right? They're not thinking like, I really need to get it together this summer so I can start school fresh and not have any hiccups in what school I go to. We have kids that have been to 6 schools in 2 years. We have kids who have wrecked their GPA. So we offer credit recovery because we want to make a hybrid program for kids that need it to help them get back to their original graduation date. We started asking questions like, where do you feel the lowest self-esteem? School. Where do you have the most access to drugs? School. Where are your dealers? School. We have the medical community donate scrubs to us, preferably the nasty ones, because when you're at a dress code, we don't want to put you in a cute outfit. And then we do random drug testing. Random means frequent, and then sometimes not so random. We used to do a third-party vendor, and the third-party vendor was trying to sell clean urine to our kids. Not cool. 1 year, we confiscated a fake penis, which was totally entertaining. But for the most part, they don't go to crazy lengths. It's actually ridiculous and alarming how easy it is for kids to get drugs at school. So it's not like having to find a crack house in some horrible neighborhood in Houston, Texas to go get your drugs. No, you're getting your drugs from some kid who's a junior at your school who plays on the lacrosse team. So our policy is we don't expect you to be perfect, but we do expect you to be honest. So if we have a student here who is struggling with sobriety and they come to me and they tell me, hey, I've made some bad choices, I'm struggling, I used a couple of days ago, then I'll assess where their willingness is for recovery, and we'll be an advocate for them to remain at Archway. So it's very individualized. I don't like having a blanket policy for every kid because their situations are different. I think the largest recovery high schools are, 80 to 100, 120 students, but most recovery high schools are smaller. I mean, they're like 30, 40 students. And so you can create kind of like a second family for young people. They have a whole lot of parents, all their teachers, the administrators, the counselors, but they begin to care about each other in a way that you don't typically see in regular school.
Yeah, because I just think that if we say we're making out, we never make out in the hallway.
Sometimes y'all are making out in the hallway. Sometimes I have been seeing a lot of heavy tongue action going on. Not every time, but sometimes.
I mean, I understand why y'all say that, but that's why I don't say anything. But
do you not like my delivery? Do you feel like I'm being sarcastic? So really, there's no way I can say it that I'm not going to get an eye roll from you.
I mean, this is my shit, really.
Okay.
Nothing you do.
All right. Well, I just want to check it out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I love you.
Love you too.
Our son, Nick, kind of towards the end of his 8th grade year, we started noticing changes in him. He was really isolating a lot when he was home, and we thought, well, it's a teenager.
It was so hard to try to figure out how much of this is the teenage behavior that's unfortunately normal and how much of this is a problem. And I really leaned teen stuff.
Started using when I was in 7th grade. I had a lot of friends that were already getting high, stuff like that, but I played football, so that kept me on track. Then football season ended and started hanging out with people that I didn't normally hang out with.
One day, I checked up on where he was supposed to be, and he wasn't, and so I was waiting outside for him, and he didn't expect me to be outside, and when he came up, immediately when I looked at him, I saw his eyes, and it just was like a slap in the face that, oh my God, you're high.
Started hanging out with this dude, and he had an older brother. I was riding around with them one day, and he pulled out a blunt, and they asked me if I ever smoked before, and I was like, yeah, I've smoked before. But I really hadn't, I just said that because I wanted to look cool or whatever. And so that was the first time I ever smoked weed. And then I did that again, and that time I was like, ooh, I like this.
We contacted the Council on Drugs and Alcohol here in Houston and started him in an outpatient program there. So he would go into a teen group, and then Jeff and I would go into a parent group, and they randomly would drug test him, and he was passing the drug test. And so we felt like, okay, maybe he's turning things around. And one day I got a call from his school that he'd been arrested for possession of a controlled substance.
We knew at that point he wouldn't be going somewhere for 30 days. And they don't really give you a time frame. They just say, look, this isn't a time-based program. It's an achievement-based program.
You go and you take a look at it, and it's hard to think, like, I'm going to have to sign my child over, to these people. So it was a very hard decision.
I was still smoking weed a lot or whatever. And then I got into pills a lot. Just every day, just popping pills, codeine tablets like Xanax, morphine, just a lot of downers. And after the pills came, I started doing the codeine syrup.
We had made a decision to do it, but we had some logistical issues around getting him there.
They cannot put their hands on him. They can't, pull your child in. And so they told us, well, we've had parents handcuff themselves to their child, but you have to kind of get them in. We can't do anything.
We knew we had to hire what's called a transporter, somebody that would come and do it for us.
We called him on the phone, and he basically said, I'll come to your house, I'll surprise him, we'll be in and out of your house in less than 7 minutes. And my husband kept saying, oh no, my son will fight you. He's not going to willingly go. He doesn't want to go to treatment.
We realized that the day that we were going to put him in was ultimately the day for his birthday.
And that was the day I got woken up by two very, very big dudes.
It went pretty much like the transporter said, to my surprise, which was, I'll be at your house at around 5:45. You'll meet me outside, and you'll lead me into his room. And he said, we'll be out in 10 minutes. And he was probably out in 4.
I hid in the bedroom. I could hear them telling him, keep your hands up, because they don't know if they have anything. And I could just hear Nick saying, no, no, no.
They're like, all right, you're coming with us. And I'm like, no, I'm not. What is this? And then they pull me out of my bed and put me in handcuffs and took me to the Center for Success and Independence.
It was one of the worst days, emotionally. My husband pretty much shut down. And he said, close his bedroom door and do not open it. I cannot look in there.
On the way there, they were telling me, if you're good, you can leave today. And so when I got there, there's this one dude, he's like, you planning on staying here for a while? I'm like, no, I'm leaving today. What are you talking about? And he's like, no, you're not. I was there for 7.5 months.
When I talked to the parents who are asking me if putting him in residential is the right thing, it seems kind of drastic. I'll ask them, what did you get him for his birthday last year? And they'll say Xbox or, a game, something like that. And I told them, okay. For my son's birthday this year, I got him flowers and a balloon. And I took those out and I put them on his grave. And I told him, happy birthday. And unless you want to do the same every year for the rest of your life, get him help. Get him into treatment. Danny wrote a poem for his mother and I when he was in treatment. I want to be at home. I'm ready to do right. I don't want y'all to worry. I don't want us to fight. I want us to have a better relationship. I want us to be tight. And don't wait up or worry. Everything's all right. Just open my door. I'm asleep in my bed tonight. And the reason that gets me is that with everything that could have happened, everything that comes with that lifestyle, what comes with addiction, he was home. He laid down in his bed in the room across the hall from me, and he went to sleep. And he never woke up.
During adolescence, one of the greatest developmental needs and urges is to belong. And that fuels literally the striving to use chemicals as a group.
Whenever we work with adolescents, we have to understand that adolescent development is different from adult development. As we've understood neuroscience, we've come to understand that the adolescent brain is not fully developed until one's early 20s. And the part that's last to develop in the adolescent brain is the executive function. And so for any adolescent, whether they're using substances or not, making clear, rational decisions is going to be more challenging than an adult.
Substance abuse with adolescents is such a complicated issue. It's a very deceptively complicated issue because you have family history, you have genetics, you have the mental health issues, you have the broader community, and so many kids go home, they walk through their neighborhoods, and there's people on the corners using, and their families using, and so when we look at the Just Say No message or some of the interventions we've done in the school system, we can't really rely on that as being an intervention because it's a much bigger problem than that.
I think a lot of us just look at it as young people making bad decisions or being bad kids or they had bad parenting or they come from bad families, and none of that is true. Trying to get across to people that the behaviors that we see in addicts are the symptoms of their disease. When you have someone whose behaviors are flaring, that shows that they need a lot of help. And they don't get the help they need because they go into treatment, and when the drugs and alcohol are out of their system for 5 days or 2 weeks or whatever it is, insurance stops paying and they have to leave treatment, and then they're back out on the street.
A 30-day rehab is really setting yourself up for failure. It takes 90, it takes a year, really in recovery up to 5 years before you can actually function at a level where you don't need a lot of support around you.
The research varies, but you'll see numbers anywhere from 40 or 50% on up to about 80% of adolescents following treatment go back to use, right back to where they were, if not worse. And so it's critical to have ongoing, continuing care available, and that has been lacking for adolescents.
It feels surreal, like it being like my last check-in. Like I've been here for 4 years, and this is literally all I've known. It's been like my APGs and Archway, so it's just going to be different, like moving on. But I'm incredibly grateful for this school, especially like through like the hard times that I've had this year, like last year with due suicide, and just the love I felt from this community. It's indescribable.
I don't know, this is my 3rd year here. I'm pretty much with Jeff. I'm like really sad to be graduating. I don't know, I've had like a really good time at Archway, like doing all kinds of things, like getting in fights with Becky, setting my pants on fire in Miller's room. And also being here with people through like the hardest times of my life. Like, I don't know, these past 3 years have been crazy, and like how different I am today, it's insane. But yeah, I love you guys a whole lot.
I wouldn't have met like my closest friends if it wasn't for this school. And like, I'm sitting here and like, most of the reason why I'm crying is because I don't even know if I'm gonna graduate. Like, I said this like once before, but this is like really what I wanted to say, is that like, I'm actually like a really smart person. And and I never ever tried in school, like ever. And like everyone always told me, like, apply yourself, you'd be really smart, like you could do great things. And I'd like fail classes or like couldn't even stay in classes. Like before I came to Archway especially, like I had to have a lady follow me around school, like a social worker. Like I couldn't stay in any class. And so like, I just want to tell y'all, like so many people told me and I didn't believe them, but like I cannot say this enough. Please just try hard here. Like I took it kind of like as a joke, but now I'm like terrified for my future, and I really set myself up for shit, and it's really scary. And I like just hope that y'all like this sounds so dramatic, but don't make the same mistake I did. I'm not like going to hell or anything, but like it's scary facing like a future.
Part of what recovery schools do that are so different is we really are looking at mind, body, soul for the students. What is the tone, the emotional, spiritual tone that is set for the high school? Because that's going to impact how the kids are going to learn.
We know in our community that 51% of teenagers during their high school years smoke marijuana at least once, and 70 to 80% of them are going to drink alcohol at least once. But that doesn't mean those kids are going to develop a substance use disorder. But for that population of kids that have the predisposition, that it just flips a switch for them. As an adolescent, it's really hard to figure out what makes me different than these other kids, and I just want to fit in like every adolescent wants to. Teen and Family Services follows the framework of a model called alternative peer group support. And it's the idea of creating community for kids in the same way that the adult recovery community creates community for adults. And so, the basis of it is community as a change agent. We blend that with counseling services, so individual and family counseling, group counseling, parent support, and then social functions on the weekends. And we really incorporate and blend in the counseling services with the pro-social activities, so it doesn't feel coarse or clinical to the teenagers that are coming in.
I don't know that Archway would be as successful as we are without the alternative peer groups, and then without the baseline of the residential treatment centers. Because a lot of times the kids start sobriety in residential treatment, then the alternative peer groups are where all of that sobriety is nurtured, where they can sustain sobriety for long periods of time.
This model it's a pipeline, and the pipeline is fed by the APGs. So the schools are only as good as the APGs.
When you take a student, you give them a foundation of recovery and residential treatment, you get them into an alternative peer group where they learn how to live out what they've learned, and then you put them in a sober high school, they're literally surrounded by the recovery lifestyle.
There's nothing more powerful than watching a young person inspired by another young person. I like to think that with all my training and all of my investment, that I could carry somebody through this, wrap them in cotton, and make them my children. Bottom line is their connection with each other. That's what makes it possible.
When I was in high school in Amarillo, Texas, in the mid and early 60s, there was a little bit of drinking that was going on, not daily. There was no marijuana there. And it was a totally different world in that sense. By 1975, it was everywhere. There was a lot of mythology about drugs and everything. You had Timothy Leary running around saying, oh, it's a good way to get close to God is by doing LSD. Rock and roll was big, and rock and roll and music and dope have always been hooked together. And being told, just like we are now in a lot of cases, that it's not that big a deal. You can handle it. And if you really got your act together, you can use a little and it won't mess things up. I was the poster boy for that because I was using every day. The last 3 years of my use, I was shooting heroin and still going to college. By that time, I weighed about 140 pounds. I was 6'1". It all came to an abrupt halt when I was arrested for sales and possession of 10 ounces of heroin. That's 1975 Texas, sales and possession of a record amount of heroin, a school teacher. It went on the news, it was in the paper, it was horrible. There had been comments made by the prosecutor that he would rather see a murderer go free than somebody like me. So I decided to go ahead and follow my attorney's advice. You need to get in this PDAP thing, Palmer Drug Abuse Program.
Palmer Church was a rather staid congregation, and they authorized this trial of what became known as PDAP. And I don't think they knew what they're getting into.
The history of PDAP is the history of APGs. Palmer Drug Abuse Program in 1971, up until that point, there were recovery meetings, recovery groups all across the United States that were effective with the 12 steps, but nothing had really tackled the issue of what are these teenagers, where do they have to go? The people back then found out real quickly that they heal each other.
My plan was to go in there and con whatever this drug abuse program thing was, you know? And I walked into the meeting and I told them the truth about where I was and how I got there. And they accepted me. They looked like me, they talked like me. They would come up and hug me, and I can tell you, it felt good. You know, and I've been sober ever since.
We were still teenagers, still crazy, still had a lot of fun, but we did it sober, and we did it without burning our lives down.
There were a bunch of young people who were dying and going to prison, and there was nothing out there. And they just kind of held on to each other and kept themselves from dying. There were no professors around. There were no psychiatrists around. It was young people.
What a revolution it really was. You know, there was nothing like that was successful at reaching teenagers. Pretty quickly after I came in, they spread all over Houston. So within about 6 months, there were probably 10 of them. Within a year, there was probably 20. And then it started going out to other cities across the state and all over the United States.
There was nobody who sat back and looked at Houston and said, hey, let's do all these things. There were thousands of young people and parents who, one at a time, came together trying to solve issues. And there were some really hard heads that, despite anything, kept on going.
How many people around you, surrounding you, in terms of neighbors, friends, family, would you say are using drugs or affected by drugs?
I'm gonna say, if I have to give a percentage, maybe 95%. Yeah, it's almost everybody. It may not be hard drugs like crack cocaine or heroin or anything like that, but weed and pills and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a lot of people.
I was not expecting that percentage.
I was once in that percentage.
We have to deal with more inner city kids, which is a big issue. I mean, I think we are working toward that, but putting APGs in the inner cities where we can help all the kids.
My dad, still to this day, is addicted to alcohol. And I grew up in an abusive household. So, yes, addiction is very serious to me.
A lot of times I feel like adolescents get written off because they're young. And when you're dealing with adolescents from inner cities, they are really put in boxes. Like there's no hope, there's no opportunities, there's no chance for them. This is just a rite of passage. And some of them don't make it out of that rite of passage. I love Archway Academy's approach. I really do. More of our young people need to be exposed to that.
My mom, she was addicted to powder cocaine and she committed suicide. So I left high school because I had to start working for myself.
The problem that we deal with is that we bring the young people in, we give them some tools to help them in their recovery, but we return them back to the community that they came from. And it was a lot of things going on in that community that attributed to their drug use.
We can't just forget the fact that our kids seem to be challenged more with lack of resources than any other kids in the city of Houston.
What blew my mind is that we never knew what an APG was, and I have 25 years sobriety. We never knew what an alternative peer group was in our community.
We have nothing in there in the city. You all talking about APGs and recovery high schools. I never knew that. I've been in Houston all my life. And I said, what about the inner city kids?
Treatment centers hadn't heard of it. I mean, clinical staff. I said, do you know what an alternative peer? No. The school's been here for a long time and no one has known.
I said, well, maybe you could bring your kids over to my meeting to help our kids. And they were like, well, they're not gonna mix. I said, no, let me tell you something. If they don't have any dope and I got some, and I'm in the inner city, they don't care where I come from, they're gonna buy my dope. So that's what they have in common. They all do dope.
In the Houston area, it's almost taboo to talk about drugs and alcohol in classroom. And somebody's in that room is going to make a good faith effort because they know that they need help. Now this is a child, and you can't turn them down. You have to do what you can do.
When you take a young person, you put them in a meeting with old people, we lose it. Because he's in that room saying, hell, I ain't older than them. I ain't gonna never get that. I ain't doing that. Ain't none of me. I ain't never did that. Well, my argument is this. Here's who I'm looking for. I'm looking for Lil Willie. Or Lil Earl. Not Lil Earl, Lil Earl. Give me Lil Earl. With his sitting on the side, with his cap turned backwards, with his pants sagging. Why? Because nobody want to be bothered with Lil Earl. You see, let me talk to Lil Earl. Why? Because if I can bring Lil Earl in, put him around some other young brothers, he can see some hope.
We need this in our community. I get excited when I meet young people and they say, well, where do I go? Like, I don't know many places. I am a counselor on the other side where the resources are plenty. But guess what? I know Arnell.
It's not that we don't have young people in recovery in inner city communities. That ain't the problem. The problem is that we don't have the resources to offer them the opportunities for long-term recovery.
I have always had an issue with young people going to 12-step meetings that adults are at. I don't think they're being heard, and I don't think they're hearing, really. So because of what Arnell is doing, our young people have a place to go.
Our dream is to put the APGs in our community where there are no more excuses. As soon as you get out of one of these treatment centers, you have an APG available to you in your community where you can go and recover. Because recovery is beautiful.
I come in here very, very clear that we're not going to be able to save them all. But boy, if we could just do one and do it well. And because it's peer-led and peer recovery, guess what's gonna happen? Then he takes it to somebody, right? And then he takes it to somebody. And then he takes it to somebody. And then he takes it to her. And she takes it to her. And she takes it to her. And guess what? We got a whole new generation of young folks. Instead of being Generation Lost and Generation X and all this other stuff we calling them, man, Generation Found.
I would like to see it change from a look of this is just a young person to what it really is. It's our future. It won't be any legacy if we don't have anybody to carry it on.
I had spent so many years working so hard to engineer my own life. I was achieving all these goals I had set for myself, and I was miserable. And as soon as I gave that up and said, I'm just going to live one day at a time, I was offered a job that was more incredible and more suited for me than anything I could have gone out there looking for. So I have a lot of gratitude for that.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
So my role here it's an interesting one. Nearly every school day, I'm providing some degree of academic support to students, but also so much of what I do day to day is relational. It is pouring into these students so that when they are struggling, they trust me enough to be able to talk to me about that stuff. I think a big reason for that is the fact that I'm open about being in recovery.
What's that thing your mom is at?
That's the bell. That's the doorbell.
That's the doorbell?
Mm-hmm. It has a blinking feature for deaf people.
feel like you're lying to me.
I'm not. I'm really not.
Sure. I still feel like you're lying to me.
I've never lied to you, ever.
That's a lie.
That is a lie. You got me. There were several students with over a year's sobriety when I came here. One of our seniors had been sober for 4 years, and I had been sober for 6 months. I don't do E like that.
Can you show me?
Yeah. So, here, here, here. No, tripping. Here, here, here. My sobriety date is February 20th, 2011. So February 20th, 2012, I not only acknowledged that it was my sobriety birthday, but I acknowledged that it was my first sobriety birthday.
Do sexy back.
That would sound ridiculous.
I'm bringing sexy
You can't play sexy back on a ukulele.
I remember the first time I met Parker was at a Mexican food restaurant. And I immediately fell in love with him. There's something about Parker, just a sweetness and a tenderness that's just hard not to feel connected to.
I was very buttoned up around the students for the first year of my time at Three Oaks. And seeing how Sasha interacted with the kids made me realize what I wasn't doing, but what I could be doing. And that is be human, be vulnerable, be real. And once I started doing that, I began to have that kind of closeness with my students as well.
For decades now, we have been aware of this particular element of alternative peer groups and enthusiastic recovery model, and that is something we call talent-based hiring. We do that consciously. We watch people interact with young people and parents, and those who seem to be able to carry the message, who are gifted with it, that's who we hire. We've been doing that since the beginning days.
Where my purpose, my true gift and purpose is to sit across from a hurting kid and say, I hear you. Let me give you some experience. Let me show you some things maybe that you can't see. Let me affirm all the beautiful parts of who you are. That's how I'm going to make an impact and how I'm going to make a difference, is by sitting still with individual students and helping them transform.
There's a big procession. All the graduates walk in. We're all up at the very, very top of the main sanctuary. So I think I'm going to have you be like the senior speaker. And really, it's an opportunity for you to just share with everyone at graduation what your experience has been like. So it can be a little bit of what it was like before, so that we can sort of like capture the essence of what the dark period looked like for you. And it can be a little bit about how you felt as an individual, what you thought was happening in your family at the time, and kind of the intensity of what you were feeling, the hopelessness and that kind of stuff. And then, whatever the catalyst was that got you into an alternative peer group.
When I first heard of Archway, I was like, there's no way there's a school full of sober teenagers. But when I got there, it was like, your principal wanted to be your friend. The teachers wanted to know about how your day was. And all these people suddenly cared about what you were doing and wanted you to be happy. And it was so overwhelming and strange at the time, because I was like, this doesn't happen. Teenagers don't do this. I remember I was in my second treatment center, and I was crying and begging them to take me home because I didn't want to do it. I kept telling everyone that I didn't want to be there and I didn't care about being sober, and I kept talking up all the drugs I was doing. And they put me in teen and family, and oh my God, I was so miserable. I was like, who are you people? Why do you keep telling me you love me? You're weird. And I didn't believe that they didn't get high. I remember always telling my old friends, these kids are totally lying. They're so happy, and they're just doing this for their parents. I guarantee you, there's no way this is real.
Hannah, when she first attended Archway, was not down for recovery. It was really clear there was a piece of her that wanted sobriety, and the addiction voice was much louder in her head. And so after Hannah had been at Archway for 2 or 3 months, she left and went to the Center for Success and Independence. When she graduated from that treatment facility, she called me and asked me if she could come back. And I told her, absolutely.
There was a time where someone on student council told me that they were talking about kicking me out. And Sasha was like, no, like she has hope, like she has potential. She's like being honest. And I was shocked when she said it at the time. Really, you like me? Like, I feel like I wouldn't like me if I was you.
The types of behaviors that Hannah was engaged in during her addiction were really scary. And if you just look at Hannah, adorable little blonde-haired girl with a sweet, soft voice, you kind of wouldn't be prepared to hear the kind of stuff that she got herself involved in during her addiction. And her going to the Center for Success and Independence absolutely saved her life.
We had one family session where we sat down and I was like, I want to go to UT. I want to go into counseling. I want to do this. I want to have a real life. All of a sudden, my parents' faces lit up because they were like, oh my God, yes, finally you actually want something for yourself and you have a goal. And that's when the change just happened. For the first time in my life, I wanted that. Before it was comfortable to kind of be upset and angry. And now it was this is I don't want to do this.
To have her have that much transformation was so beautiful. In the 7 years that I've been at Archway, she's probably the girl who has impacted our community in the deepest way. Because when she shares her story, she really shares the pain. And when she shares about her recovery, you can see it all over her.
The day he discharged was such an emotional day. I was scared to death, after 7.5 months, and it's just come pick him up. He's coming home. We left there at 3:30, and at 7 o'clock, we were at an alternative peer group meeting that night. The next day, we met with his counselor, and I dropped him off with the whole recovery group, and he just continued on that path. He started at Archway. Once I learned that we had a sober school here in Houston, and once I was faced with the statistics of kids that go back to their same environment, I just knew that was not an option.
I know a lot of people that have tried to go to regular high school while being in recovery, and I personally haven't tried it, so I can't tell you what it's like to do that, but I can tell you that being in a recovery high school makes it 10 times easier.
He just told me, I don't think I'll stay sober if I go back to my regular school. And I know that that's what's kept him sober and, kept him around a supportive group that they can all relate to each other.
I call Archway a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows what's going on. If something happens, everybody knows about it. And it's not like everyone knows about it. We're going to talk and say stuff about you behind your back. It's man, I feel for that person. Or, hey, I know I've been through something like that. I'm going to go talk to him. There's a lot of things that play a part of why I'm sober. But my friendships that I have today are one of the biggest things. I love knowing that I have people that have my back, when it comes to emotional stuff, and have my back also, won't accept BS from me. It's if I'm in the wrong, they'll be like, dude, I love you to death, but you're wrong right now, and you need to change that. Other friends from the past would let you fall. Might be there to pick you up, but might not. The friends I have today, they'll tell me when I'm in the wrong, and if I fall, they'll help pick me up, not a doubt in my mind, and I'll do the same for them. Even when I was getting high, even if someone did do that for me, I wouldn't necessarily want to do that for them. But today, I have no problem helping my friends.
I'm glad to see a lot of familiar faces here from the last time. Basically, I just want to tell y'all my recovery story. The way I grew up was hard, which, a lot of us have that in common. I'm 34 years old. I was born in 1981 to a teenage mother. She was 14 years old when she had me. My parents, they were real young. They're good people, but you know, they struggled with addiction. Pretty much all my family, drinking or drug use. That's what I grew up around. I remember staying in the back of a Mexican bar. We had a little place in the back where we used to sleep while my dad attended bar. My grandmother was a big support to me at that time, but she had cancer, and she got real sick, and she passed away when I was 5. I got into drugs. At the age of 12, I started smoking marijuana. At the age of 12, I also caught my first felony. After that, I was in and out of juvenile detention centers. At the age of 14, I was introduced to powder cocaine. I had gotten shot on the street, and I was in a lot of pain. And I didn't go to the doctor at the time. And a family member, he said, hey, this right here will take away that pain, you know what I mean? And then that's what he gave me was cocaine. After that, my life consisted of robbing, selling drugs, getting high, street life. I started getting involved in gangs, drugs heavily, prostitution. I was running prostitutes for my uncle. I first went to prison at the age of 17 years old. I was certified as an adult. I did 2 years. I got out for 4 months, and I caught a federal case and went to the federal penitentiary. The first few times I was in prison, I pretty much had fun in there. You know what I'm saying? I had what I wanted. I did what I wanted. But this last time, they had something in store for me. They put me in solitary confinement. I spent 5 years in solitary confinement. And it changed me. In them 5 years, I seen so many people not be able to make it back there, which, you know, sadly to say they commit suicide. While I was back there, I had 5 years to think about what I had been through up until that point. I knew that if I didn't find myself and stick on to something, I was gonna be like the people that I used to just watch go crazy in front of my eyes. I was beat and taken to the hospital on multiple occasions by prison guards. You know, they gas you, and then, you know, they'll go in there and they're gonna beat you up, you know what I mean? Like 5-man teams. I asked God that if he got me through this time, that when I got out, that I would do something totally different. And he blessed me. I was released, and I haven't looked back. My appearance, the way I look, my 7 felonies, I didn't have too many options. I could go back to doing what I used to do, but I knew where that was gonna get me. I always wanted to help others, so I decided to be a substance abuse recovery coach. I'm now hired full-time. I done came from a cell to an office. The motivation and determination that y'all used out in the streets to do wrong, if y'all switch that style up and do it in a positive way, y'all can do anything y'all wanna do, man. Anything. We're giving the kids and people in the inner city somewhere to go that'll support them on their path to recovery. And they're at an age to where they could go either way. You know, if they encounter somebody that wants to give them drugs, a gun, they'll go that way quick. But if they encounter somebody like me that wants to take them to a positive road, you know, I've done seen it, they'll go that way. So it's really critical to get them at that point.
Okay, y'all know this cat right here? Yeah. I got a lot of respect for him, man. From the first time I saw him. Guys like this you can learn a whole lot from. You know? They're talking about respect. He can tell you about all that. I can tell you a little bit, but see, I'm old. Y'all probably think that I haven't been through what y'all been through. But I have. Just a long time ago. But man, we are so glad you all are here. Because all we're trying to do is to try to give you a choice. Who knows what a choice is? You know what a choice is? Huh? Okay. How about a better decision? See, because some of these decisions y'all made got where they wearing you up at? Right here.
When I was little, I had my dad, and like, he lived for 8 years, and I still haven't seen him. I just started doing drugs when I was 8. Like, my big brother handed me over drugs and all that.
I have a dad. I've been with him, but I was with him only with smoking problems and drinking problems. And we always used to smoke and drink wherever we went.
I have my dad in my life. I just don't like speak to him like that.
Okay. Why you think he mad with the world?
No, I don't really know why. Like something happened, I don't like the way it goes. So if it don't go my way, I don't accept it.
So when things don't go your way, you don't accept it, so it makes you mad.
Yeah.
And when I get mad, I do what?
Get in trouble, steal stuff, leave out the house, stay out, not listen to nobody.
My final question is, when that happens, who do I think I'm hurt? Who am I hurting?
Myself, my parents.
When I started getting in trouble at y'all age, my father abandoned me because he was like, he could not accept or fathom me going to jail. It was just like, you ain't my son, you know, like he just cut me off. I mean, no nothing.
Now I really can appreciate you guys for having enough courage really to talk about real personal issues. Because back in the day, we didn't talk about that. You better not ask me nothing about my dad.
I remember wandering outside, you know, I'm young, 5, playing and getting into what I could get into. And something caught my eye. And it was a big old puddle, dark puddle. And me being young, you know, I went over there to investigate. And I really didn't know exactly what it was, so I remember I touched it. It was blood. And I started looking around a little more and I found like a bunch of bloody rags and towels. So I'm like, there's something going on. So that's when I ran back inside to tell them, you know, there's blood outside, you know, something going on out there. What happened? What's going on? And that's when they told me that my dad had been murdered over that night. And changed me, man. Right then and there, changed a lot about me, how I turned out. I had trust issues my whole life because of that. I always thought that if I put too much trust into somebody, why when they just gonna get taken away from me? Why put trust or love into something when it's gonna be snatched from me? That's how I lived my life. And it hurt me, you know, and I just, you know, took it out, you know, and dealt with it the best way possible, which back then was, for me, drugs. But you know, now, and over the process of me doing, you know, my prison time and just growing, I'm not a grown man, I'm a growing man still. What I decided with my kids now, you know, I wasn't there for them, pretty much like y'all's dad. I can relate, because I've been that guy that wasn't there for his kids, because I was in prison and doing drugs. But today, I'm there for my kids, and I give them what I didn't have. I'm breaking the cycle. And y'all can do the same thing, man. We came a long way since we first started. We had good peer support meetings. We're real open to share. We get positive feedback. The ones that have a little bit more time here, y'all just keep passing it on down. And give what y'all learned, give it back. Keep this going. That's what it's about, man. That's what I'm doing now. If just one of y'all take what I've had to say and what we've learned and what we've shared, if y'all take that out with y'all, and y'all don't never drink or use drugs again, that's what it's about for me, man.
2014. We just want y'all to just have a blast tonight. We do this because we want you to have just an incredible night, a fun night. Sasha and I are really, really excited about this. We do this for y'all.
There are definitely times when I've heard kids say things to me or to Parker around how much they love that we do SPROM together.
There are a lot of elements that mirror like a normal prom, right? The stretch limos, dressing up and everything. But unlike a normal prom, the people in this room are in recovery. We want to celebrate that.
All right, we're gonna do the sobriety countdown. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start with 25 years. Anybody have 25 years? Ah, shit.
I imagine those students at a regular prom.
Anybody have 19 years sober? Up here. And me. Yeah, buddy.
One of two things would be happening. They'd either be loaded at a regular prom, a lot of people are, or they probably wouldn't be very happy.
3.
They'd probably be on the sides, looking at everybody, not feeling like they fully fit in, feeling weird that they're sober at a regular prom.
2.
Here they get to be with students who are like them, everybody walking the same path.
1. Everybody else 1 year, get up here. 7 days, 1 week. She has the least amount of sober here today. And I'll tell you what, it takes a lot longer to get 7 days sober than it does to get almost 20 years sober. She needs the biggest applause here.
They're dancing like crazy, they're laughing, and they're sober.
Parker and I have worked really, really hard to create an educational environment where kids want to show up because they absolutely adore the people that work there. I don't know that you can have like amazing teachers doing all this cool creative stuff with kids and connecting with them, you know, if you have like stiff suit leadership. So yes, you should absolutely dance with your students at SPROM. Maybe not twerk it all the way down to the ground, but I mean, you should get in there. If more educators would sit in the halls with kids that are crying, I don't know, it'd be pretty amazing. I tell the kids a lot, it's very appropriate to have fear about what's next, you know, because you don't know if you can do it yet, you know, but part of what recovery gives you is faith. Faith that as long as you're sober and you stay connected, that you can do anything. The process of being an addict and then becoming a young person in recovery, what could be harder than that? Hey, if you could go from shooting dope in your arm to being an A/B student at a sober high school with sustained recovery for a year, hell yeah, you can go get your cosmetology license. Hell yeah, you can be a chemical engineer. Hell yeah, you can go to nursing school. If you are able to overcome the depths of your addiction, to find a place of hope, how could you dare say to yourself, I can't do that? Your whole life, you've lived in a place in your head that says, I can't do that.
Today is like any other. The sun rises, the wind blows, people laugh, and people cry. Today is also fresh and new like no other day. Today is a graduation, a passage, a completion, a celebration. We honor these graduates for their focus, direction, their strength, and endurance. Today, we also say a blessing for tomorrow. This graduation opens another door to another time. Give these graduates the focus and clarity they need to understand their purpose in the world. Give them the courage to embrace who they are. They may be afraid of what comes next or confused about what direction to go. But remind them that they are surrounded by a community of recovery that will help them walk through the fear.
This year is Archway's 10-year birthday, which is a really big deal. And not only are we 10 years old, but we are the largest recovery high school in the United States. Really proud to tell you this year that 96% of these 31 on the stage will be attending college this fall. And I think that's a true testimony of what can happen when you are in one of the darkest places in your life and then you transform. We get to witness the miracles of kids finding their light again, finding their purpose again, believing in themselves again. So the reason we share those statistics with you is because sometimes there's a perception that when you get into recovery, that your standards get lowered. And this is living, breathing proof that when you get into recovery, sometimes your standards exceed what you even thought was possible for yourself. So that's a lot to celebrate for us today. So the reason we feel so proud is because, in my opinion, I feel like the students on this stage have more integrity and more character and more endurance and more perseverance than all of the kids that were seniors of 2014 in other schools. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our senior speaker, Hannah.
I learned that I am worthy of giving and receiving love, and the voice in my head that seemed to be running my life got quieter each day. With counseling, my family's relationship grew stronger too, and after 4 months in treatment, I left a new person. I came back to Archway in my APG not as a gloomy, cold-hearted girl with no self-esteem, but as a confident young woman committed to her sobriety and to helping others.
By the power vested in me by the state of Texas, the Southwest School Board of Education, and Archway Academy, and upon the recommendation of the faculty, I confer on you the high school diploma with all the rights and privileges thereunto appertaining on the 3rd day of June. Congratulations, you are now. You will always be Archway Academy's June class of 2014.
So I've been going to meetings and I have a new sponsor and she's like really cool, but like I'm having a really hard time adjusting at UT because like my roommates drink and it seems like everyone gets like friends and stuff at parties, and so I don't really know how to like connect with people. And then self-esteem wise, there's a big part of me that's like you wouldn't have gotten into UT if you didn't go to Archway.
This is a much bigger transition for you than it is for some 18-year-old girl that went to a mega high school with 4,000 kids and now goes to a
college with thousands of people. You know, the last couple of years, it was like you lived in a small town being an Archway and Antino family. So I would imagine the transition for you is kind of like what the transition would be like for someone who lived in a small town and then went to a big university.
When I was in Houston, I was in a very recovery bubble, like with school and like my APG. And one of like the hardest things for me is trying to organize time. And when I was in Houston, like it was so structured. Like you did this group every day and you did this, and like on the weekends you went to functions and stuff like that. And so it was just like it was hard for me to really find motivation when everyone around me wasn't doing it. Like I was working such a strong program in Houston, and when I moved to Austin, I kind of like laid back a little bit and I didn't do as much as I was doing. And I guess that's just not like a problem for other people because they don't have to like, it's not life or death for them if they go or not. I remember I was at orientation and I was talking to this girl and I was asking her like, oh, like what activities are you going to get involved in campus? And she was like talking about a sorority or something. And she was like, what about you? And I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the Center for Students in Recovery. And she was like, recovery from what? And then I like told her, and suddenly like she was like gone. It was just super awkward for me because it felt almost like, well, maybe I shouldn't tell people. But then it's like, that's dumb. Like, this is my life. I still haven't gotten involved with the Center for Students in Recovery on campus, mainly because I've lived APG life for so long that I kind of wanted to see if I could do it on my own. It was just like really scary to go somewhere where like I didn't know a whole lot of people and I had like no expectations for what it would be like because I just didn't know anything, and like it was totally new territory for me. But it's getting better. I like it in Austin now. I mean, the recovery community in Austin is really nice, and like it's large enough to where there's enough young people to like find people to hang out with, and there's like a couple girls in my classes, which is like super weird. It's like we never would have noticed them before, but like now we're friends. I miss that sense of community where we were all together and everything was like open and you knew everything about each other, and like it was super like loving environment. I think it helped because it like removed us from the situation that we were in to give us like a whole new start, and just to be like, this can be your life if you want it.
I know that you're not used to getting C's, but C's your freshman year, your first semester, like I want you to give yourself a break a little bit.
No, it doesn't matter.
Don't.
We may have to wait on Sanborn Sessions.
Okay.
Why?
Because I don't know.
Where he is?
I don't know. He told me that he's not for sure.
What? What does that mean?
By the way he was talking to me, I don't know.
What?
I don't know, Nick.
I don't understand what you're saying.
He's not finished putting everything together yet.
He's just not doing grading?
He's done grading, but the way he was talking, I don't know if the results are good.
Nick's journey really, to me, symbolizes what the journey of recovery looks like for most people, which is not every day is a beautiful day.
I moved out of my parents' house and got my own apartment with my roommate Nico. I was working for my parents, going to school.
Nick's family has had to experience the roller coaster ride of Nick and his choices and how his choices impact his family.
At that time, I was coming here every day, just like not talking to anybody. I was, just going through the motions of being at school, not really caring.
Nick got on a therapeutic contract with us around his attendance and his tardies to school. So Nick got himself kicked out of school because he couldn't follow the contract that we both agreed to.
They wanted him to make some amends, and he chose a different route and dropped out. And so we had to deal with that about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And while that was hard on us, we realized that this is really something that he had to want more than we did.
I was like doing everything that I could to get kicked out. I wanted to get kicked out. I was like, I don't want to come here anymore. I'm over it. I'm over going to school, whatever. I'm going to drop out.
So for a period of time, Nick was not enrolled at Archway. And I think it was during that time that he made the decision, hey, I don't have the sober school holding me accountable for my recovery. I have a lot more independence now.
You know, one day I got off work and, you know, I got my friend's phone number that I used to, you know, get high with and stuff, and I knew that he would be, you know, smoking weed, and so I hit him up and, you know, I smoked with him that day. The feeling of being high obviously felt good, you know, but it just didn't feel right, you know. I was with like a couple of my old friends and I just kind of left randomly. You know, I started regretting it. I'm like, why am I here? You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be at.
It wasn't a good time. And all he could think about during and after was all the people he was going to let down and all the changes that might come to his life and how embarrassed he felt.
Luckily for him and us, but mostly him, he had some revelations and decided to come back.
I called Sasha, you know, and I said, yeah, I want to get back into school. What do I need to do? She said, all you need to do is show up.
Nick walks a lot of lines. Nick walked the sobriety line, you know, am I going to be sober? Am I not going to be sober? Where am I with all this? Maybe I shouldn't do drugs, but maybe I can drink. So he's had to come to grips with his own personal beliefs about himself being a young person in recovery. But he tiptoed the line big time of making it to graduation.
All right, Nick, so you know you've been here for 3 years, right? So we're going up and down, right? And we worked hard at some points, but your second cycle put you in a deep hole.
We were together at the center with Sasha, and she was speaking about upcoming graduation, and I said, is my kid gonna make it? And she said, I don't know.
Something clicked, and I was like, you know, I need to do everything I can. You know, it's late in the year. You know, it's just, it might not work, but, you know, I just did everything I could to, you know, make sure that I could say, once I realized that I need to do something, I did everything I could to try and graduate.
As we discussed several times, that put you in a position where you had to get an 80 on this cycle, plus, you know, basically the same grade on the final.
I told Nick that I was looking forward to failing him if he deserved to fail, because one thing that recovery teaches us is that we have to earn things. We have to work for things, or they mean nothing to us.
In the end, again, it was a huge hole to go, dig out of, but in the end, you passed.
Man, y'all just planned that.
Sorry, we didn't plan for me to lay it on that thick, but I figured that sounded better. So yes, you did. You got a 71, but that's good enough. 71 is passing, so you do get credit for
you give me a hug,
economics, and you do, I think, you know, at least in my class, get enough to graduate. So everyone enjoy. All right, no problems. All right,
y'all are messed up, man.
Appreciate it.
Hey.
What are you doing?
I got something to tell you.
Why?
I'm graduating on whatever day I'm supposed to be.
You for sure are?
Yeah, they just told me.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, God, your graduation!
Thank you.
That's Monday, by the way. Well, we'll be the loud, screaming, crazy family in the audience that day.
Okay.
Well, you be sure to tell everybody thank you for standing by you.
Yeah, I did, but I'll probably say it again.
Good enough with your shenanigans.
Part of what recovery gives people is an opportunity to live out their dreams. And one thing I can say about Nick, even if I don't agree with every single choice that he's making regarding how he's living his life, he is absolutely fulfilling his life dream. He's following his passion for music. He's becoming independent. All of the things that we want our young people to do that addiction normally traps them into never being able to do for themselves. The reason you get into recovery is to show up as the best version of yourself and to live out every dream that you feel like is your purpose on this planet. And Nick is doing that right now.
Most of you that know and love these kids know that it was really difficult to love them during those really rough years where you probably thought you lost a little bit of who they are. And when you looked into their eyes, you didn't really see the person that you knew and loved looking back at you. And I get the honor of watching the light come on, and watching families heal, and watching people come together, and watching kids who thought maybe they wouldn't graduate from high school acknowledge that they're some of the brightest young people on this planet. And I can't think of a better way to spend the days of my life than doing this.
I think a lot of young people grow up being trained through the media and through celebrities and through reality TV that getting loaded is really cool. And I think my son's having a very different experience because he comes to sober prom and he comes to graduation and he comes with me to visit kids in jail and he comes with me to visit kids in residential treatment. And I think what he thinks is that it's really cool to be sober.
What's the scariest part about Archway? And then we're out.
The scariest part is when sometimes the kids leave because they make bad choices and I don't know where they are and I miss them.
Yeah, at the tattoo place they were smoking. Yeah. Well, they can get fired.
I think sometimes I share too much with you.
No, you don't.
All right, are you ready for school?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Hey, you need to be in your seat in a safe position.
I am.
Okay. Is your seatbelt on and it's over your shoulder?
Yes.
Okay. I think running Recovery High School gives me so much compassion for the teachers that teach my son. So I see a lot of parallels between what I do and what my son is experiencing. You know, the fact that he's finishing first grade and moving into second grade and how quickly this time goes by and how important the teachers are in his life. He spends 40 hours a week with his teacher. He spends more time with her than he does with my husband and I. So having loving, nurturing people, helping to guide him, helping to shape him is really important to me. So I think I carry a huge responsibility as to all the teachers in sober high schools. We're not just providing them with an education. We're their 40-hour-a-week model of what it feels like to be a good person. And I expect that of teachers for my son. And I have a responsibility to do that for teenagers.
Hey, how you doing? I'm doing great.
Are you a news reporter?
No, I'm not a news reporter. You have a blessed day, though.
All right, thank you, man.
You're welcome. Are you a news reporter?
You got me on there, man? Is I'm on there?
Are you on?
No, yeah. Can I?
He's just with me driving to work.
Oh, okay.
We're filming a documentary about addiction and recovery.
That's good. Mm-hmm. You in recovery?
I am.
Where you go?
14 years I've been in recovery.
Good.
Yeah.
Where you go? Where your home group?
Oh, well.
I talked to you later.
Good to see you. Where's my home group? Damn. It's amazing the people you just meet on the street. He obviously knows enough about recovery to know you need a home group.
I think I asked too many questions, and I know I'll never understand how to help all those around me when I am just one man. And there's so many who feel helpless, that there's just too much to be done. But I know it makes all the difference. The revolution has begun. If I can help just one, and it can help just one, and she can help just one, if we can help just one. I put my heart into my labor, and something back. So now I'll offer this reflection to all the mourners dressed in black. Lord knows it's so hard to pray when mercy only comes to song. We seek forgiveness when we rise each day.